whole court process, right? And this comes after what we've talked about so far. So this comes after the arrests. You've been charged by a police officer, and now you have to front the court. So what actually happens when you go to the court? We've talked about the first part of the process, which is the committal hearing. So the committal hearing, that's held in the magistrate's court, and this is looking and saying, is there enough evidence? Okay, let's say we use the example of me with the boat that I stole. They'd be having a look and say, well, is there enough evidence for me to actually face trial? And that's heard in the magistrate's court. So this is for more serious matters that are going to go on high. And if the magistrate says, yes, there is enough evidence, then it'll go to the district or the Supreme Court. And that will depend on what the maximum charge I'm facing. I would imagine if I've stolen someone's boat, I'm probably facing a maximum penalty of maybe 4 or 5 years. So that'll be heard in the district court. But if maybe in stealing the boat I've murdered someone and am facing life imprisonment, that will be heard in the Supreme Court. So whatever your maximum penalty dictates where you're going to go. Ben? I don't know for sure. You'd have to look at the legislation and see what is the maximum possible penalty. I imagine it would be a Supreme Court thing. So I'm not sure who you're thinking of kidnapping, but that's where it might end up. So once you go to court, okay, once I've kidnapped someone, I've then got to enter a plea. And this is, am I guilty or am I not guilty? If I plead not guilty, then we go and we get a jury together and we have a trial if it's in the district or the Supreme Court. If I say I am guilty, it goes straight to sentencing. And I want you guys to have a think about this and say, is there some part of this that might be a problem in the future if I plead guilty and it just goes straight to a sentence? Just have a think and see if anything comes from your thinking there. Once the trial is started, I've pleaded not guilty, then we're going to get some witnesses and some evidence. Evidence might be pictures from a security camera that saw me driving off with the boat. A witness might be the police officer who arrested me down the road with the boat attached to my car. They might also get the neighbour whose boat I'd taken as a witness. And first that happens is the prosecution. The person who's trying to prove the crime, the police or the Department of Public Prosecution representative, they will put all their evidence forward. And then the defence, the person who's accused of guilty of the crime, their side will put their evidence forward. Then the judge sums up. They say, okay, here's the evidence that we've heard in this trial. There's a really important point of law you've got. Maybe, let's say, in a case where someone's died, they might reiterate what the definition of manslaughter is and what the definition of murder is, because that might be very important for the jury. So if there's anything important, they would sum that up. The jury would then deliberate and say, what result have we got out of this? And the jury in Queensland has to be unanimous. All 12 have to agree. If 11 people agree and one doesn't, then that person isn't decided to be guilty or not guilty. The court then decides whether they have another trial or not. And then after that, the judge will put together a sentence. And there will be a special hearing about the sentence because there might be factors that need to be heard with it. So, for example, has this person been involved in a whole lot of crimes before? That might influence the judge when they're thinking about his or her sentence. Has the person who's been sentenced, have they done a lot of really good community work? That might be something that influences them. So that's the last element of it. The judge will decide whether there's some jail time or a fine, community service, maybe even a suspended sentence where they say, okay, if you do something wrong, you'll get a punishment. But for the moment, you've got that hanging over your head.